Hey everybody, Elizabeth Nader back with you, the Nader Narrative on Jersey First TV. So honored to have a special guest here with me today, Eric Carroll of Dad Talk Today. Eric, welcome to the show.
Elizabeth, thank you so much.
We have an incredibly important subject to talk about. And right now the viewers are going, Dad Talk Today. What is that, Dad Talk Today? Well, guys, this is incredibly important, and girls. This is about men. This is about fathers. This is about the attack on fathers, the attack and war we've seen on fathers and men in society really for a few decades now, and what that's done to the nuclear family. And we're going to tell you why that's important if you don't already know why that is so key. But Eric, what you're doing, I'm so impressed with it. I want you to tell the viewers about your podcast, about It's Bigger Than That, about Dad Talk Today and why you're doing it. But first, let's back up a little bit, because we all get into things in life as a result of our experiences, right? And no painful experience really should be wasted. I think it's always part of who we are and things that we can bring back to help other people. So Eric, share with us a little bit your story and how that got you to the point of starting Dad Talk Today.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for having me. I was born and raised in Columbus, Georgia. My dad was a pastor, both my grandfathers, uncles, cousins. So I came from a family rich in ministry. The one thing I said I would never do is get into ministry, but yet doing this, if this isn't a ministry, I don't know what is. Being that pastor son, I definitely had my share of troubles. Everybody has heard the stories about preachers' kids, but the one thing I wanted more than anything in this life was just to have a family. And I went through some hard times in my teenage years and in my 20s, but I found myself going through a divorce, becoming a single father. And that was a very challenging moment. And I think many men, when they go through this, they hurry up and get in another relationship to be validated by somebody. And I think women do the same thing, right?
Right.
And I did this, right out of my divorce. And we went very quickly, ended up having a child with this person, and it went ugly quick. It really did. Here I am raising, two daughters as a single father. But when it comes to being a father to my new child, I had to go through the family court system. I had been through divorce before, but me and the ex had done it amicably without the courts. But when I found myself having to go talk to an attorney is when it really started revealing itself to me. The first attorney I talked to, I had to pay $400 to consult with for an hour, which is a lot of money for me at that time. Sure. And his advice was to me was, you're a man. It's not going to happen. It was cheaper to keep her, go get back with her. And I was like, okay, that's not going to happen. So I go talk to another attorney. He said, man, you've got a great case. We can help you get whatever you want. I need $10,000 on retainer. And at this point in time, I was $10,000 in debt on my credit card from my divorce. And I was like, it felt so hopeless. So I went and got a new job, hoping to get, they promised me more money, management, the whole 9 yards, thinking I'll be able to fight this soon. I was there 1 month before they called everybody into the office and told us they were shutting the company down worldwide. And it was just one of those feelings that it's so hard to explain to you. It's like every way I go, it seems like I'm being blocked from being a dad. Yeah. And I think that happened for a reason, though, because I was trying to go into a new job that I cared absolutely nothing about. And my purpose was right there, and I wasn't going. My 20s, I worked with celebrities and bands and stuff like that. And I said, you know what? Nobody ever speaks about this family court issue or men's issues. What if we had a podcast? I was a big podcast listener. Yeah. And so I got the idea to do this podcast, and I actually wanted to call it Dad Talk. Dad Talk was $2,000 on GoDaddy.
Of course.
So I couldn't buy that, but I see down in the suggested Dad Talk Today.
Yeah.
$10. And I said, you know what? I'm going to try it. And if it fails, I lost $10. Yeah. What I didn't expect to happen was before we did our first podcast, we had 10,000 followers on social media. We started reaching so many guys that was saying, I've been through that. I know what that's like. I feel like you're in my head. And I've just realized the stigma behind men, they don't really speak to each other. They kind of keep it in and they can compress it. So it just kind of blossomed from there. We started back in 2019. It's 2022. We got about 500,000 following online.
Amazing.
And the amount of stories that you hear from these men that are going through just really bad cases. You know, they claim the fatherless issue is because of these deadbeat dads that don't want to be in their kids' lives. Family court is a $60 billion a year industry. It didn't get that way because these guys aren't fighting.
No, listen, it's a business. And one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you is because, I mean, I think society has had an all-out war on men and fathers, but the really one of the main instruments is family court. And for those who have been through it, they'll understand that. And it really can hurt either the man or the woman, frankly, although it tends to be, as you say, most lawyers will say to you, oh, you're the guy, you're the father, so good luck to you. But, you know, we know that family court is broken if you spend any time or have any experience or any friends or yourself having gone through it. And so it's really been a big tool that has been used to beat down the father. And you're right. We know fatherless families and the, dissolving of the nuclear family is at the core of really our culture starting to fall apart. But why is it? And why are fathers not around? It's not always because they're leaving. And you look at family court and the way that it's set up is really that 1% or less than 1% of what we would call maybe a deadbeat father. Now, if someone's listening and saying, hey, that was my father, or that was my husband, it's not for us to judge everyone's situation. But what we don't want to do is a broad stroke right across every man and say, because you are the father, because you are the man in this situation, you're going through this situation, this divorce, you no longer have rights. You no longer have a chance to rebuild your life. You are no longer innocent until proven guilty. Eric, talk about, your experience now. You've heard so many stories. I can't even imagine how in family court, not like other areas of our judicial system, it's sort of upside down, isn't it?
Oh, 100%. And thank you for saying that also, by the way, that if, this isn't your situation, it doesn't discredit everybody else. I think that's one of the hardest things when you're telling people about family court is if you haven't been there, you don't understand it. And it's hard to put yourself in somebody else's shoes. This family court thing, you're taking two people that are once loved each other. Now they're experiencing conflict. Okay. It's at one of the worst times of their marriage or their relationship or whatever. And now we're going to take them to this building where people profit off of that conflict. They're not there to decrease it. They're there to increase it.
Right.
And the children get caught in the middle every single time. And I think it is our responsibility to the legislation, to society in general, to make sure that we recognize these people are experiencing that conflict. What can we do to decrease it? There's so many incentives there, like Section 8, which says, we'll give you government assistance, but only if the father's not in the home. We have seen that completely decimate the Black community. I think we're around 73 to 74% fatherlessness in the Black community, where it used to be one of the strongest family units in the country.
Wow.
These incentives are deadly. You got Title 4D. A lot of people don't know that the state actually makes a percentage off of every dollar that's paid in child support. So,
wow. Wait, say that again. Say that again.
The state makes money off of the money that's being paid in child support. So then if you think about that, if you were the state and you wanted to make the most money, whoever makes the most money should get the least amount of time because they pay the max in child support. It's a business.
Right.
And when over half of your legislators are attorneys, I hate to say this because there are some good legislators out there, and some of you, I'm not talking about you, but they know who I'm talking about. It feels like going to the abusers and saying, stop the abuse.
Right.
They just turn a blind eye to it. So it is such a big problem.
So we've got the business aspect of it, of family court. And again, if in a situation where there is a woman who's making more money, we've had that in the news recently with Kelly Clarkson, where, these big awards happen. So it's not always the man and the woman in terms of the man being the one who pays, but it doesn't matter. The point is it's a business. The point is what you're saying is there's actually legislation associated with this. There is an incentive associated with this. And so now we've seen the decline of the family because there's an incentive for the fathers not to be there. And then they are looked at also as really the one walking into the situation a lot of the time, not every time, but a lot of time is the one who is the perpetrator of many things. So what are you hearing, Eric, in terms of those stories? And I know that's going to lead to the conversation of parental alienation.
So I think one of the biggest stories that's came across my show was the story of John Mast. We have a documentary on YouTube, 100% free. If you wanted to know kind of how this system goes, it's called I Stand With John. It's about a father. He grew up Amish. He got married. He got an allegation of domestic violence, and they actually had a recording at this because it happened at a restaurant. He had a recording of it there, and he took it to court and said, "Judge, look for yourself. Just watch it. You know, there's no hearsay." Judge said they didn't have anything to play it with, so they weren't going to allow it in the court. Well, at that point in time, John is being told that plead guilty, go ahead and get the settlement. He didn't want to do it, but he did. Now, fast forward a couple of months later, he files for divorce after this. After he files for divorce, 1 month later, he finds out he's being accused of sexually molesting his children. It gets worse and worse. So John then goes to family court. The new judge says, "I want to see that evidence." They watch it and they say, "You didn't do any of the things that they said you did. Therefore, it calls into question everything else that you was accused of." So he was exonerated. He goes a couple of more years, spends hundreds of thousands of dollars, has an amazing family that supported him. Last February, or actually, let me turn that back. Thanksgiving of 2020, he came on my show to tell his story. Now, I didn't have him on the screen, and I didn't say his name or his kids' names because anything you say and or do will be used against you in court.
Right.
And John connected with us, and then like 2 months later, I woke up in the middle of the night. You get so many of these stories. I can't explain what it does. It really like a cancer sometimes. And I'll wake up in the middle of the night just to use the bathroom. And the first thing I do is check my phone because I want to make sure nobody's in distress. Yeah. And that morning I woke up and got my phone, and it was a sister. I had never talked to her before. And she said, "I wanted you to know John got murdered last night."
Oh my gosh.
He had been exonerated. It was his day to finally get his kids. He was there. He was waiting. He sees the ex's car pulling up, thinks it's the ex. It was his ex-father-in-law, got out the car and shot him and killed him. 10 minutes later, the ex comes pulling up in the parking lot with the 2 young kids, and they see their dad dead on the ground.
Oh my gosh.
That was when this really, because you don't realize the importance of what you're doing until you see events like this. I knew it was important, but that just put in a whole new reality to me. And then after we did that documentary, the amount of people that started reaching out, of fathers that are getting killed, kids that are getting killed. I mean, we're seeing it where they're killing the kids and then killing themselves. Where is this on the media?
Right. Where is the help for the fathers, or frankly, the other spouse, if they're the alienated one? But it's just numbers, guys. I mean, the reality is it's the fathers who are paying in many ways the heaviest price. We have to look at the numbers in that regard. If we look at the past few decades, we've done a lot in society to bring down the image of the man, of the strong father. I always tell the story, if you look back to Beaver Cleaver, right? Leave It to Beaver. And what is that? The 60s,
Yeah.
50s and 60s. And we look at that because when you look at entertainment in Hollywood, it's often reflective and very much reflective of what's going on in our society. And back then, the man was venerated, right? The father was venerated. He was the strong figure. And that wasn't an abusive family. It wasn't like the woman was nothing. It was just simply what reflective of the way society saw the roles. As things change and as we watch Hollywood and we watch that reflection, you start to see sitcoms where, and I could list them all, but you know them, where the man now is a joke, right? He's a joke and he's laughed at. And I mean, Married with Children, right? Like, remember that guy? I mean, one after another where now it's broken families and it's the father is the joke of the family, but the woman is always strong. And it's interesting to me, if you watch that trajectory, it lines up with the really more and more the divorce rate going up, more and more men being on the sort of the short end of the stick. Eric, when a man goes through a divorce, if he's in family court and he's in a situation where it really doesn't go his way, he is financially strapped, he doesn't have the custody he wants, is he able really to live a life and to move on as much as the other party?
Many times, no. Suicide is 7 times higher in males after the age of 20 than it is that of women. And a lot of that is tied to the family courts. And to give you an example, I could give you a million, but I have a father here in the state of Georgia. They're supposed to only take 20% of your paycheck, they say. Makes $250,000 a year. After he pays child support every paycheck, he comes home with $25. And they get this. He's still got to pay $4,500 a month in alimony. And he's only got $100 left after his paycheck.
See that now, it makes you wonder, and I think people hearing that think, come on, that can't be the case. This calculation. Dig into this, guys. Look into it. Talk to people who've been through it. It's not logical. It doesn't make sense. In fact, there's a movie, and we talked about this before. Dr. Drew did it, called
Yep.
Divorce Court, right? And
Yep.
it's really about the business of family court. And if you watch that, and you'll hear stories from men and from women, you'll see that what decisions are made and the metrics used don't make sense. If we're going to help a society heal, if we're going to help people who must go through a divorce come out the other side, Eric, they need a chance at another life. Both parties need a chance at another life. You can't live a complete and fulfilling life if financially you literally cannot do anything.
Oh, 100%. And, people think I'm just completely against child support, and I might get some flack for saying this. I see it where it's needed in some cases. I really do. But where does it become about the needs of the child? The child needs to be fed, needs to be clothed,
Right.
needs a home. I get that. But some of the, like what that guy's paying, $4,500 or every bit of his paycheck, and then still has to pay alimony. It's no longer about the needs of the child. It's about how much money we can make. I mean, here he's got an ex that's taking everything that he's working for, and then you release this guy back out into society.
Yeah.
What is that doing to our mental health and everything else?
Right. Mental health of the man who's going through that, or the woman who's going through that. I think, you hear the stories too of men and women who unfortunately are facing a divorce, and they obviously go through the process. And Eric, you've probably heard these stories where they didn't want it to be litigious. They didn't want it to be intense. And once sort of the business end of it took over, all of a sudden now thousands and thousands and thousands get spent, and it becomes a fight. And there is a business aspect to it, is there not, Eric, that then turns with two normally logical people who maybe could have worked it out against each other? Is there another solution?
There definitely is. And I'm not an advocate for Netflix, but you just brought up something. They made a documentary called Marriage Story, or as a movie. And it shows two people that didn't want to be together anymore, but they were very friendly and wanted to do everything down the line. Woman goes around to her friend and she starts saying, you need to take him to court. You need to do this. And she's like, no, I don't want to do that to him. But she goes and talks to an attorney. And that's when that attorney says, oh, he's going to come after you for this, 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 and this. And by the end of that movie, you watch this attorney, two attorneys turn these parents against each other that could have done it on their own. You got to understand, these attorneys don't make money if they don't have conflict.
Yeah.
It's the image that they're there to decrease the conflict, but that's not what makes the profits for them.
Right. And so arbitration, and there are other options. And I know that there are some within the legal field who have tried to put forth options to couples that wouldn't involve all this, expense. But once children are involved, right, it becomes very complicated. And this is really the issue now. These children are growing up watching this happen. How do you mitigate these damages to kids? Because we know that when a father is not present, we know that, we have the studies. We've seen what's happened in modern society. When a father is not present, there is damage for the children, no matter what. And to those good people who've been through this situation, who've tried to lessen that, that's great. And there are things that you can do. But what starts to happen, Eric, when the father is absent by no decision of his own?
You see the fatherless statistics. You see the mass shootings. I think Dr. Farrell said it, the majority of people that are in prison right now came from fatherless homes. Before I met you last week, we went to the streets of Baltimore and sat with about 10 Black fathers there in Baltimore. 8 out of 10 of them came from fatherless homes. We left from there and went to the substance abuse centers. We got to interview some of the workers who were former addicts themselves, and interviewed the addicts. They were all fatherless.
Wow.
I mean, it was very powerful. And I think a lot of people know that, again, but the gun control and all that, I think, makes more ratings and stuff. But this needs to become a part of the conversation, because the consequences are enormous.
Well, if part of the conversation's father's rights. I mean, we don't hear that word enough. Now, we've heard a lot about women, and as we should. And, fortunately for women, we've had many doors open to us. And I know there are still struggles, and I get that. But you haven't heard much about the father. Now, we are talking after a pretty historic decision that was made in a case that some would say, oh, that's just Hollywood and salacious, but it's not. It's actually groundbreaking. And of course, I'm talking about Johnny Depp and Amber Heard. Now, why this is so important, and it's not salacious actually, is because we've seen in society the trajectory of how we treat men and how we treat women. And the Me Too movement, while it highlighted some disgusting behavior from men that needed to be highlighted, there was an other darker side of it, which is the hijacking of something, right, to one's own purpose. And we see this trial with Amber Heard and Johnny Depp. What to you, when you saw that coming to light, I know that you took particular note of this because you talk to so many men that feel that no one stands up for them. No one understands what they've been through. No one admits that there is domestic violence against men. So when you first saw this coming to light and coming to the courts, what did you think?
I thought it was going to be one of the most important cases of our lifetime, but so many people were programmed to think that it was just this celebrity hoo-ha or whatever. I mean, it's sad that it took it happening to Johnny Depp, a celebrity, for people to start seeing what was going on. And I think many people had. It had just never been pushed back like that before, you know?
So it needed to come to light, obviously. And, I think a lot of the diminishing of it, saying there are other important things going on. But now we know the verdict. We know that, in fact, Johnny Depp's team successfully proved that he was, in fact, defamed. Now, part of that verdict did not include a decision that he was actually abused, right? Physically abused, because that was not what was being decided upon. It was a defamation case. But what did you think about that whole aspect of it? Domestic violence, such a critical issue, so important for us to understand it. We're really built as a society around helping women with that. And we should, because, women have struggled with that in terms of being, the recipient of that violence. But now turning that on its head, Eric, I would probably argue for decades, in fact, for really as long as there have been relationships, there are men who have been victims of domestic violence.
Definitely, and I think the hardest part about speaking for fathers' rights is people think when you do that, that means you hate women or you think it's all women. I have 4 daughters. I couldn't have a son. Right. I love them dearly. I love my mom. I got a beautiful wife. They have been huge supports to me. And I actually very deeply empathize with women that are going through these issues because if you're a mom and you don't have custody, you must have done something really, really bad, right?
Yeah,
it's
tough.
The stigma that comes back. But we are all on the same side if you want to see this equality happen, because the women are out here making these false claims of abuse are taking away the voice from the real victims, just the way they are doing with fathers. We are all on the same team. And I think people need to see it as that. But again, not surprised. If you go back to the early 90s, Senator, he's now the president of the United States, but Senator Joe Biden made the Violence Against Women's Act. It gives billions of dollars in funding to these domestic violence organizations that have to keep that Me Too narrative. It was made off of what is called the Duluth model from Duluth, Minnesota, which says 90% of the time, man's going to be an abuser. He's going to use his male privilege. He's going to cheat, blah, blah, blah. That has been taught to our family law attorneys. It's been taught to legislators. And that's what is behind that legislation. And it just got reauthorized, by the way, into a $1.5 trillion spending bill. That's how dangerous that this thing is. And I think, like I said, a lot of these men have tried, but if they don't feel like they're being listened to or that it's going to do any good, you start seeing some of them check out. And I hate to say this, I don't think anybody should do that, but I understand why they are. I'd rather see them check out than go commit suicide like many of them are doing. Right. And if we do not get the men back in the home, the reason they attacked masculinity is because they knew if masculinity was present, the stuff that you're seeing happen in this country right now, it wouldn't be happening.
You are so right. Oh my gosh, that is so true. And that's the problem. And that's why as people listen to this, they think, well, why should we care? Or I don't want to believe men, I want to believe women. You should care because our society, the very fabric of it is falling apart because of what we've done to the family and ultimately what we've done to men in the family. Now, you just cited something which is fascinating to me. It's really a flawed statistic, which is 90%, the Duluth statistic, right? 90% are women. So an entire framework got built on that. So you have someone who clearly, and I think anybody watching the trial of Johnny Depp would say he was obviously abused. And again, that wasn't what the question that was put to the jury, but he clearly was physically abused from the evidence presented. But one would never assume that a man of power a man of means and a man of influence could be the victim. So if he is a victim of that, and I use that word, in the strictest definition, he literally received abuse, right?
Yeah.
If he is a victim of that, then how many men have you talked to who have none of those resources, as I just described, who have also been abused? Where do they go with that?
The majority of them that I speak to on the page have been through that. I've been through that. I am Johnny Depp. A lot of these other men, that's why this case resonated so much with these men. Harvard once did a study that showed 70% of the time that domestic violence was initiated by women and that it was 50-50. 4 days later, it disappeared. You tell me why that happened. You can find it now. But they know that this is going on, like I've said, but that Violence Against Women's Act with that funding, I predict right now after this Johnny Depp case, you are about to see a media push that's going to hurry up and bring up another case to cover this up. They're already doing it. They're trying to put Bill Cosby back in there in the middle of this Johnny Depp stuff because he's such an easy target, right?
Right.
And then when you've got the media and everything else feeding that, like you was talking about, like the entertainment and the TV shows, it's very dangerous stuff. You want fathers back in the household, let them fight for them.
Even if you've had a difficult husband or a difficult father, you don't want to just enlarge that to all of society. Everyone has their story and we don't want to minimize that, but we need strong fathers. And ultimately the truth needs to win. And I think that's the problem with family court is often the truth is irrelevant or the truth doesn't get told. And I want, those listening to consider what happens to a man specifically who goes through something difficult, who's on the losing end of it, who now has a life that's incredibly minimized. He's financially under serious pressure. He's maybe alienated from his children. Parental alienation is a big thing where, often that will happen. And now what choice does he have in terms of where to take his life? That's a wounded individual. Now, Eric, if that wounded individual gets into another relationship, has more children, and that wounded person doesn't heal, what are we doing? We're perpetuating this.
Pass it on. If you don't heal from what cut you, you will bleed on those that, aren't the ones that did it. I forget how that goes, but it's very true. I went through it. Like I said, I jumped straight into another relationship trying to find validation from somewhere else. And then you get in these toxic relationships, and whether you want it to or not, you can be the most peaceful person. You get used to that, that argumentative style with that person, and it kind of rubs off on you. And then you go and you take it somewhere else. I think it's cliche, Elizabeth, as cliche gets, but you got to first love yourself before you can love anybody else. Take the time, make sure you are who you want to be before you go into that next relationship and get all of this away. Because, it definitely does follow you.
Well, that's great advice for anybody who's, recently been through a divorce or a difficult family court situation or going through one now. I know a lot of them reach out to you. What other tips or advice can you give? And I know your ministry, and it really is the right word to use, which is using what you went through for a purpose, to men who are going through this and seeing this and feeling like, frankly, I'm going to say it, me too. That's what they're feeling like now with this death decision. So what do you say to them?
So I'm a little bit different than the other people that you'll see in the father's rights arena. And I think father's rights has a stench to it because there were some extremists back in the day, and we're still trying to kind of smooth that over. But there is like this movement called MGTOW, men going their own way. They don't believe in getting married. They don't believe in having a relationship with women. She's just to have fun with. Don't do that. And a lot of men are saying that, and I understand why they are. I'm of the other thing. I came from that strong nuclear family, and I believe the values and everything that it's about. Divorce was very high. As of recent, divorce is at one of the lowest rates that it's ever been. And people think that's a good thing. Marriage is at an all-time low. Single parenthood is on the rise. People aren't getting married anymore. They don't believe in that traditional nuclear family. So if we don't clean some of this up, we're just watching our families disappear. A child needs a mom and a dad. They both are best. And if you split up with your partner, it doesn't have to be a war. Do what's in the best interest of your child. Come together. You came together to make a child. You can come together and parent a child. Keep the courts out of it. That would be my best advice, because once you take it there, it's not about your best interest. It's not about the kid's best interest. It's about who's going to win and who can sling the most mud.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, it's so true. And mental health now is really the issue we should be talking about all the time. We haven't figured it out. It's a broken system. And as a result of, people's lives who get broken, we create mental health issues. You brought that up earlier with the school shootings and everything. There's so much of that that's part and parcel to someone's mental health and things that they've been through. I'm sure when we start to look at the story of that, the recent Texas shooter, we'll hear some disturbing things about his background. And so we keep creating broken people. We've got to heal people. We've got to heal the family. And, we all recognize that we make mistakes and we go through difficult things. But the more that we destroy each other and feed into a system that is set up really, and I say family court is really created to destroy. It isn't created to heal. And I think as a society, and you look at other cultures, you look at other countries, they don't work this way. It's sort of uniquely American, isn't it, Eric, in a very sad way?
Surprisingly, I mean, for the most part, but you got countries like Australia that almost completely imitates America. I
Well,
mean,
they're
it's even
starting to.
worse.
Yeah.
Yeah. Canada, we have a worldwide audience, surprisingly. I've heard from India, Australia, Canada, and I couldn't understand that because a lot of those guys that are living in those countries are watching us more than what's going on in their own country. And I finally ended up asking one day, they said, "You don't understand. America leads the rest of the world. Our country follows you.
Well, there you go.
We're wanting you to get it done there." So the
Yeah.
whole world depends on us, not just the whole world. What we're doing here, we're doing for our grandkids and their grandkids, the future generation, something that's going to live on. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think this is such an important topic. I know people are going to have emotions about it, especially those who've been through difficult things. But ultimately, I don't think anyone can argue against wanting to have whole and healed people and to keep the nuclear family as intact as possible. And we do have to watch our politicians and our legislators and the legislation that gets written. And I think, Eric, you brought up some good points is what's behind it? What's the motivation? Follow the money, as they say in almost any of these situations, if you really want to understand the truth and have those moments where you recognize that each of us can stop feeding into this broken system. Now, dads that are listening who want help, who feel like they're alone, and I know they're listening, and I know that there are some out there that just are so frustrated. How do they reach out to you? You guys have a support network. I know it's not just you, you have a few others that are in the organization. So give people information on how they can watch your show and reach out for help.
so you can follow us. Facebook is our biggest platform. We're also on Instagram, Rumble, Twitter, YouTube, on just about all of them, True Social. And you can tune in there. We have a support group on Facebook that's 100% free. We keep it a private group so nobody can come in there and either try to troll you or your exes watching what you're saying. It's a place that you can come vent to people that do know what it is that you're going through. And if you've got a story and you've been through this, you need to be in that support group because even if you're a person that says, "Hey, I've been through this, but I'm over it now," but this guy's going through it now. And he needs somebody he can relate to. Rehab rarely works because you're talking to doctors and people that don't know what it is, what you're going through. But when you talk to another addict, they've been there, they've done that. And I've seen more addicts get clean because they found somebody they can relate to. And it's the same with these victims that have been through the family courts. They need somebody that understands what they've been through because people on the outside don't get it. We get it. We get it. And we want to foster a place where you feel safe to come and talk about it. We celebrate being men and celebrate being fathers. It's one of the proudest moments of our life. So we would love for you to be there, and you're not alone.
That should be celebrated. And I would like to see in the future, in the near future, more work done legislatively to protect fathers and protect the family. And I predict, Eric, you'll probably be involved in some of that. You've got a great voice. And I would hope that our legislators who listen to the show, and they do in New Jersey, would understand that New Jersey is a difficult state when it comes to fathers and family court. And we need to take a look at that because that is the building block of us healing as a state and being a place that we can raise families successfully. So, Eric, I hope there are more legislative opportunities in your future to affect what's going on in the country. And I just want to give you so much credit for taking your pain and turning it into something meaningful that helps others and that men can relate to, because the more we have men healed and stronger, the better off we all are. And frankly, stronger men make really independent, really successful women. And that is the truth. We're better together. So I just want to appreciate you and your team for everything that you're doing.
Thank you.
And thank you for coming on. We'll have you back as we watch this issue. And to my audience, guys, check them out at all the places that Eric listed. Share this with someone that you know is struggling right now, because I know everybody knows someone who's been through this. Share this with them, and so they know that there's help out there.